everybody. Welcome to our Azrieli speaker series. This is talk number 2 of fall of 2025, and we're super excited to be hearing from a terrific team of people who are going to introduce themselves in just a moment. And this was a talk that was really good. Sometimes for our speaker series, we hear a really good talk somewhere else and we say, wow, more people need to hear about that. So this is sort of based on a talk, as it says in the first slide, that was done at Autism Europe International Congress, which just happened in the early fall in Dublin. So we're going to hear from this team, and then we're going to have some time for our questions, and we'll use our chat box and our hands when we have those questions. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Maya and Erin and Milo and Rebecca. So take it away. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Yona, and the rest of the team here for the wonderful opportunity for us all to join today. So our talk is going to be a few different parts alongside the rest of my awesome team members who will introduce themselves soon. And our talk is about improving two-way communication between autistic people and their close communication partners. And we'll be talking a little bit about the literature, some practical strategies for clinicians, autistic people themselves, and those close to autistic people, and some research applications we're excited to share with our study team. So I don't have any specific financial relationships to disclose. Wanted to give a shout out to our community partner, Dory Zenner and Associates, on this study. That's part of the Autism Alliance of Canada Data to Policy Fellowship funding. So they are generously funding our work at the Alliance alongside Dory Zenner and Associates as our invaluable community partner. And my thesis work is funded by a SSHRC CGSD award. So as an overview for today, we'll talk a little bit about neurodiversity affirming approaches to communication support and where we've come on that regard. Talk a little bit about something called communication partner training and its potential applications, some practical applications, and the largest chunk will be our research applications. So briefly, just to introduce ourselves, not everyone here is on the call today, but just wanted to give a big shout out to our main core team of the BRIDGE-CPT study, which we'll be talking about later. To give a quick introduction to myself, I'm Maya. I'm a speech language pathologist and PhD student in rehabilitation science at McMaster with my supervisor, Michelle, in the top right corner. And I chose this photo because I love being outside and being physically active. That's something that's an interest of mine and is important to me. And I'm not autistic myself, but wanted to co-design this study alongside a wonderful team of autistic youth and adults to create something that can hopefully help the community at large. Maybe I'll turn it over to Erin, then Rebecca, then Milo to introduce themselves. But just again, a shout out to Ben, Michelle, Jennifer, and Onelli on the screen too. I'll turn it over to you, Erin.
Thanks, Maya. Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Dekker. I am an autistic co-creator on this project, and I'm also part of Dory Zenner and Associates as a job coach and navigating work facilitator. And I am also a PhD student in community psychology. And my picture that I chose here is me doing pottery at home, making a jar for coffee. So for me, I have a very big passion for making things, and that's what I chose here today. Thank you.
All right, I think I'm next. I only had pictures of just my cats, so I didn't have a picture of me, but my name is Rebecca, and I am an autistic PhD student, specifically looking at how we can have autistic people lead research. And I am late discovered autistic, and I am currently reigniting some of my special interests that I had when I was younger that I tried to hide. That is collecting vintage My Little Ponies and doing these little mini paintings that I love to do. And I am
Thanks,
also
Rebecca.
a creator with Maya, sorry.
No, it's okay. I'll turn it over to Milo.
Hello, I am Milo. I am 15 years old and I I joined this team because I wanted to contribute to research that can help autistic youth like myself be better understood and supported. This photo is of me with a model I made of my favorite dinosaur, the Microraptor, which is something that I really enjoy.
Awesome. Thanks, Milo. Perfect. So just to start us off, we'll be talking a little bit about neurodiversity affirming approaches to communication support. And if we think about the field of rehabilitation, kind of mental health in general, often our intervention approaches and supports for communication for autistic youth and adults have really relied upon a medical model of disability and a deficits-focused model of autistic people's communication. And this is really aligned with, many other areas of how we've approached things for disabled people, people with disabilities. And really what this has looked like for communication is often a focus on teaching autistic people specific neurotypical communication skills or behaviors, and really measuring progress and measuring goal setting up against specific perceived deficits that we're hoping to remediate or gain skills in. Again, this is not my perspective, but painting where we've come from. And I really love this image, and I've cited the artist here, Lisa Asato. And I think from one lens, this image can illustrate this deficits focus and medical model by really looking at children and people up against specific milestones, specific measures, specific tasks we expect, and whether they're meeting those or not, with our goal of working towards meeting those. And often a lot of the current DSM-5 language that is still used for autism diagnosis reflects a lot of this perspective. We describe deficits in this aspect of communication. And again, I think this is not unique to rehabilitation and may be found in is found in other fields too. So I think there's a number of reasons it's important to think about why it matters to challenge deficits-focused approaches to communication. So deficits-focused approaches for autistic people are shown to cause harm to autistic people's mental health. So when we expect certain neurotypical skills or achieving certain norms, this can really cause and further a lot of stigma that autistic people face in society for their natural ways of being and communicating. And closely related to stigma, deficits-focused approaches can lead to something called masking or camouflaging. And for those who are not familiar, masking or camouflaging is when autistic people suppress their natural ways of being or communicating because they differ from neurotypical expectations, which can take a lot of energy, or try to act and gain certain skills to act in a neurotypical way, which may feel unnatural. So masking is complex, and there are many factors that may be necessary for safety and some value to it. However, there is a large body of literature indicating the harms of masking and its association with burnout, anxiety, depression, and other negative mental health impacts. So really zooming out as clinicians and researchers and really anyone who cares about autistic people's well-being, we should really think about what values our interventions are and supports are putting forward. Another reason why it matters to think about challenging deficits-focused approaches is because we know that communication is two-way. So if you think about your own life, maybe in a job interview or a conversation with your doctor or care provider, the answers that you give and the information you provide will of course depend on how you've been asked those questions and what environment was created for you. And in informal or personal relationships, I think probably everyone on this call has had some kind of communication breakdown or conflict with a partner, a parent, a sibling. And I think it's pretty evident that those are always two-way. There's things we can both work on, there's things we can both be aware of, and both parties contribute to communication success and breakdown. However, often the onus of clear communication has been put on the autistic person to a disproportionate level, even though we know that communication is two-way. And this is really stemming from that more deficits-focused language and model of communication for autistic people. So if we want to think about, what is a new path? What is another way to see communication and support communication? There's been a growing body of literature talking about neuroaffirming approaches for communication. And these are more in line with the social model of disability compared to a medical model of disability, which really talks about how societal barriers are disabling and that we should be looking at inherent differences rather than deficits in a person. And that doesn't mean that there's no challenges, but if we really see different ways of communicating as inherently neutral and different, not deficient, we can really see the intersection of specific strengths in certain contexts or challenges in certain contexts as a person's communication style interacts with the environment. So again, I love this image because taking a new lens that's a bit more strengths-based and less deficits-focused, if we appreciate this child's contributions for what they are, we're not measuring them up against any sort of specific expectation, we might want to foster and nurture the wonderful, intricate creation that they do have going on. And this is really aligned with the neurodiversity movement, disability rights movement in general, where much credit goes to self-advocates for really pushing for advances in this area. So really the major takeaway is seeing autistic people's communication as different and not deficient. And another takeaway here is really this emphasis on research that emphasizes the two-way nature of communication. So one area of research that supports neuroaffirming approaches to communication is something called the double empathy problem. Some people on this call may be familiar, but for those who are not, the double empathy problem talks about how perspective taking and communication breakdowns for autistic people go both ways, rather than being seen as a deficit for autistic people only. And this is really a paradigm shift that emphasizes the interactional nature of communication breakdowns and how the onus is on both autistic and non-autistic people to repair communication breakdowns, understand each other's communication profiles and needs, and really work on a supportive dyadic relationship. And there's been many studies that show, that autistic people communicate quite well with other people who communicate like them, other autistic people. And that breakdown happens more often when there's a mismatch between communication styles. So some of the studies are cited below, but this is really just one example of how research and practice is moving in this direction. So as a practicing speech language pathologist, I work with a lot of autistic clients, children, youth, and young adults, but also with adults. And as I was reading a lot of this literature and listening to friends and colleagues who are autistic and allies, I was really wondering, how can we teach non-autistic people how to better understand and communicate with autistic people, which is what's coming up in the literature and what we know is important. And really what already exists in the field of SLP or other areas that can help us realize this and translate this into our clinics. So that brings us to a discussion on communication partner training. And for those interested, I've included a QR code at the top, but I'll briefly share a bit about a research study that I did with my colleagues, Isabella Sharon and Ami Tint. And I think they've been involved with the Israeli Center as well. But as a clinician practicing with autistic children and youth, as well as adults with acquired communication differences, I reflected on ways that our therapy supports for those with acquired brain injury, such as stroke, TBI, as well as dementia, already were having these models of support called communication partner training that also put the onus of communication support, of therapy activities, and of progress on communication partners, as well as people with communication differences. So while delving into these interventions in that area of practice, I had lots of great conversations with Isabella and Ami about the alignment between these principles of communication partner training and the qualitative literature of what autistic adults are already saying they need and want from communication partners in their interactions. So this led us to publish a perspectives piece linked here that tries to align the literature on communication partner training that's already out there and literature that's already out there on what autistic adults are saying they want and need from communication partners and for communication support. So to share briefly, these were kind of 3 buckets that we found where the literature from autistic adults, mostly qualitative literature, and from communication partner training programs and evidence were really well aligned. The first area is increasing knowledge and understanding of each other's communication needs and preferences, being aware of and modifying the communication environment as needed, as well as considering specific communication behaviors to use or avoid. And again, all of this applies to both communication partners. However, the onus historically has been put mostly on the autistic communication partner. And communication partner training provides a great model to also put that onus of working towards goals on communication partners too. So just to briefly share a few examples that came up in our perspectives piece when we linked these concepts together. Some examples were for increasing knowledge and understanding. That could be learning about autistic people's communication styles, such as interest-focused communication compared to a preference for small talk overall. Modifying the communication environment could look like understanding what are the physical and sensory factors that impact communication for both parties and how to notice and support each other when you're entering those different communication environments. And the third bucket was considering communication behaviors to use or avoid. So it might be helpful to provide extra waiting time or avoid using abstract language and being unclear in your requests. So again, these are all very general strategies that require more study and evidence. But a quick practical takeaway for clinicians in the audience or anyone who wants to use these strategies from day to day is really kind of a few kind of tips and tricks here that I use in my own practice are things like promoting understanding and advocacy about people's communication preferences and needs. So when I'm supporting autistic children, youth, and young adults, we might browse websites like the National Autistic Society's Know Yourself series with a number of wonderful videos from autistic self-advocates talking about what they need for communication and prompting our discussions. Or the Autistic Space Framework. I believe Dr. Doherty was speaking at your speaker series not too long ago about this great framework for healthcare advocacy. I also think that it's important in our assessments, report writing, goal setting, and therapy that we are really intentional about avoiding deficits-focused language and really talking about differences in communication rather than framing them as deficits. So I may talk about someone's really strong interest-focused communication. That's an amazing strength when they're communicating with peers who share that interest, presenting information. It allows them to find a lot of joy, but it may present challenges if it's interacting with an environment that's not as supportive or if we're required academically to talk about another topic. And also the main takeaway that perspective taking goes both ways, and we should involve communication partners too in any strategies we're providing. And the books at the bottom, you could actually probably see them behind me on my therapy shelf as I'm joining from a clinic now, are some books that really guide through a lot of this in language for autistic youth. So I'll let Erin take it away and the rest of our team for our research applications.
Thanks, Maya. So we've talked a lot about these different background pieces so far, and now we're going to move into the applications of research practically, how we're doing this in this current study and how we do this research in general. So next slide. To start us off, we know that research working with autistic participants needs to be led by autistic people using co-design from the start, where autistic people and non-autistic researchers have that equal involvement in how the study is designed, its run, its goals, all of those things, following that motto, nothing about us without us, or nothing for us without us. And there's some guidelines for this as well. If you're not familiar with this process, a well-established one is called ASPIRE, which is academic autism spectrum partnership in research and education. It follows what we call community-based participatory research methods, where the community is involved, fully participating. And this research identifies and builds on autistic strengths in research. So going back to what Maya was saying around how there tends to be a lot of the deficits-based approach, trying to, fix and improve autistic people primarily, rather than focusing on communication partners in their environment. Our research here is really focusing on that key question: how will this research improve the lives of autistic people today and in the near future? The shift in focus to improving the lives of autistic people is going to be at the core of what we're doing here. Now I'll pass it off to Milo to talk a little bit more next.
Thank you, Erin. So today we will tell you a bit about the BRIDGE-CPT study. This study is an example of research that is co-designed by autistic people. Today we will tell you a bit about our study and then talk about our co-design process and reflections. So first, I would like to mention the study logo and share a bit about what it means to our team. The acronym BRIDGE-CPT stands for Building Relationships Through Inclusive Co-Design to Guide Effective Communication Partner Training. The concept of a bridge really represents what our study is working towards. We are trying to bridge the communication gap that often exists between autistic youth and people close to them. We hope that our study will help people close to autistic youth better understand how to support their communication and build bridges for improved understanding. The rainbow in our logo, well, it represents our team being inclusive to all aspects of diversity. We'd specifically like to acknowledge that several members of our study are part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, and we know that many autistic people are part of this community as well. Our research question is, what co-created resources and content should be included in a communication partner training program for autistic youth and people close to them? Our study uses a methodology called qualitative description. Our study uses co-design, specifically equity-based co-creation principles. Our study team includes various people, most of whom are autistic. We also have non-autistic researchers who are allies and clinicians who support autistic people. And I will pass it on to Maya.
I think, Milo, if you want to keep going about you want me to do this part?
Oh,
about the,
apologies.
different parts
Sorry,
of the study? No, that's okay. I was delayed in my slide transition. You got this.
No, sorry. So our study has 3 parts. The first part is individual interviews, during which we will hear from autistic youth, close communication partners of autistic youth, and speech-language pathologists. The goal of these interviews is to hear about people's experiences with communication. We will then use this information we found out from the interviews to pick topics for our focus groups. Everyone will be invited back to join small focus groups where they will work together to co-design the content and resources for a new communication partner training program. And at the end, we will share what each small group created in one large group to get feedback. We also plan to evaluate people's experience of our co-design study.
Awesome. Over to you, Erin.
So why are we doing community-based research? From the perspective of autism studies, we really want to focus on the power dynamics and the focus of autistic people to have access to research and emancipatory methods that put autistic people in control, very much changing the patterns from the past. This process where all of us who are on the team co-designing it, who are autistic with the researchers, can feel a sense of trust with the research team, to really feel like the work that we're doing is going to have an impact, that we are valued, and that we are a part of a team that is going to make an impact for other autistic people as well. So it benefits us as co-creators. being able to develop knowledge and skills and capacity while also being able to help the researchers who are wanting to do this work, and the impact of autistic folks after this research is implemented and that knowledge is shared. So throughout all of the different research that we're doing here, we are involved as the co-design team with the questions that we're asking participants, the materials, and all of that. So what we've done so far, at the very beginning, the research team found a grant that they applied for, and they got access to funding to be able to compensate the co-designers for our time. And we were able to join the team. So one of the partners was Dory Zenner and Associates, which I'm part of, to help inform that process. Then we recruited and created a team of autistic youth and autistic adults with a variety of lived experience, paying attention to making sure we're getting folks with different ages, genders, and diagnosis journeys, earlier diagnosis, later diagnosis, things like that. And then together we meet regularly to create all different aspects of this research together, from the research questions, the documents, every step of the way. We're reviewing, we're creating, we're participating in it. And now we're currently at the stage in the research where we're waiting for the final ethics approval from the university to start recruitment for our project. And throughout that process as well, we've been involved. And as that goes forward, we're now hopefully going to be able to launch the study very soon.
I'm going to actually jump in, Erin, because immediately before this webinar, we got ethics approval. So I've added a slide at the end where we will come back to sharing our study contact information.
Lovely, great news. And I will pass it off.
I'll turn
to
it back. Oh, awesome. I think actually, Milo, you're kicking us off here, and then back to you, Erin, before Rebecca.
So in our study, we provide multiple ways to contribute and communicate. Everyone is equally included no matter how they are participating. Someone speaking out loud doesn't triumph over someone who is typing in the chat. Everyone works together to bring attention to the ways everyone communicates and make sure that everyone is able to communicate their thoughts equally. This also goes along with recognizing how communication preferences and needs change from meeting to meeting and within the same meeting. It's important to be flexible with that. We also have many different ways to contribute to our study team. We create a clear task list where everyone gets a clear overview of what each task is, what the timelines are or times of day required to complete it, and what the task includes. This way, everyone can choose what is meaningful and possible for them. For example, for me personally, one task I was involved in was creating our study advertisement poster. I chose this as I enjoy visual arts, and it was a project that I could reasonably commit to considering my schedule. Maya and I worked together to decide on the content and visuals for the poster, and then brought our work to the team to get their thoughts too. This is just one example of how you can consider assigning tasks in a co-design project.
On the next point, for reflecting on positionality and power, we create very intentional spaces for reflection, for feedback, and there's multiple channels for this as well. So we can do it verbally, we can do it in an email, and we can also do it anonymously on a Google Doc to really ensure that everyone has the space to share what they're feeling. And throughout this process, after each meeting, we have space to consider what's working, what's not, and make those adjustments. Throughout this whole process, we really ensure that each step of the way, each of our members feels valued, feels heard, and that there's space for everyone at all points of this project.
Awesome. Thanks, Erin. Just before I turn it over to Rebecca, I wanted to quickly add that I think it's important to share that even the process of developing the process is also iterative. And it's a huge thank you to, like, obviously Michelle, who's done lots of co-design before, for giving great recommendations, but the entire team is continuously shaping the process. This is not like a prescriptive process that we're following. This is, you know, as we make new suggestions. For example, one that comes to mind is, you know, how do we invite people in on Zoom, and how long do we pause, and how do we make sure people are heard before we move to the next topic, we were talking collaboratively about, okay, maybe we can use the raise hand function, or we can leave explicit spaces and pauses for reflection. So really, we're continuously all shaping this process together. And I think that's an important takeaway for all researchers to, come in with some process and be flexible. And I guess another takeaway for me is just like, with that positionality and power piece, to constantly be reflective about my position as a researcher, as a non-autistic person kind of leading the study, and to continuously reflect on the things that I can be changing and doing, and what's going well already. So I think at the beginning, I thought giving less deadlines or more flexible, like any time that works for you in the next few weeks, will be better. But I learned that that is actually less neuroaffirming, and it's better to be very explicit about deadlines. So we've built that into our process, and I didn't know that until going in. Awesome. I'll turn it over to Rebecca now.
All right, thanks, Maya and Erin and Milo. So I just wanted to, my big reason why I'm enjoying this process is because I am a future researcher, and this is helping me to build confidence, because I do have a bit of a lack of confidence being an autistic person in academia. So I'm kind of going to focus a little bit to talk about a bit bigger picture. So moving from participation in co-creation to leadership in autism research. This kind of, for me, means not just taking part in studies, but actually leading them, and also what needs to change in academia in order to make that possible. So many autistic researchers face what can be called a double bind, and that is being seen as either too autistic or not autistic enough to be credible, to be researching and giving expertise on our autistic experience. When I tell people about my own research, some people assume that I'm studying an autism subject because I want to help the community, not because I'm part of it. And that's telling, because it shows how much academia still assumes that real expertise comes from non-autistic people studying autistic lives. This can be described, or in academia, this can be described as the hidden curriculum in higher education. That's all the unspoken rules and social expectations that can make autistic people feel like outsiders even before we start. Actually, this co-creation process for me personally is helping me to uncover some of that hidden stuff and feel a bit more confident about it. So why are autistic researchers needed anyway? So historically, a lot of autism research has been shaped by non-autistic voices, as we've talked about a bit earlier in this presentation, and some of it has caused some real harm to the community. I don't want to go deeply into it, but we are going through that currently, a lot of the rhetoric and research being used as a weapon against the autistic community. Ableist assumptions have often been mistaken for scientific accuracy. And this kind of deficit framing limits how we can even imagine autistic thriving. When autistic people lead research, we ask different questions rooted in lived experience, and that changes everything about how knowledge is created and used. Slide. So how do we make academia a bit more accessible? Grad school has a hidden set of expectations, as I mentioned, the hidden curriculum, how to network, how to sound academic, how to perform confidence, and it's exhausting if you've already spent years masking to fit in. I think we probably all know that accessibility isn't just about ramps or captions, it's also about having flexible timelines, mentorship, and emotional safety. I will say one thing I'm looking at is how grad students are matched with supervisors and what kind of mentorship that really has to be in order to support autistic researchers. We really need research spaces where autistic students can learn and lead without constantly burning out or feeling like imposters. Of course, all grad students will say that they feel like imposters, but there is an added level when you are neurodivergent and seeking this path. when disability is centered in research, not just added as an afterthought, it actually changes how knowledge is built. So it's not just participating, it's actually changing like this bigger picture knowledge of not just about autism, but about inclusion in general. So how do we lead the way? Ultimately, we need more clear paths for autistic people to lead projects, including securing funding and publishing. That means valuing lived experience as real expertise and not just as personal background. And importantly, those paths shouldn't be limited to autism research alone. Autistic researchers bring creativity, innovation, and unique problem-solving approaches that can transform any field, from education and design to technology, arts, and policies. Their insights expand what research can look like, not just who gets to do it. Co-creation, working alongside others as we are in this project, helps people like me to build confidence and experience, but leadership is really what makes lasting change. Because we want research to truly reflect the diversity of human experience, autistic people need to be part of shaping it across all areas of knowledge. And so I guess my takeaway is kind of simple after all of that big picture that I really thought of when I started, when I wanted to be part of this project, was that co-creation is definitely a great first step. But leadership is where real change can happen. And so I do thank Maya and Michelle and everybody for bringing us on board and having such a great process to kind of ramp us towards some of that real leadership in research. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca, for your great insights. And I'll jump in to say, like, in terms of part of our grant, and I'll answer more questions about this. And part of the things that we do is opportunities like this for everyone to present. It's not just, hey, you're part of the team at our meetings and that's where your role ends, but what are your goals in terms of publishing, if that's your path that you want, or presentations, or your goals in other ways, and how we can support that. But thank you, Rebecca, Erin, and Milo. We're going to finish off and have time for questions, but because we just got ethics approval literally right before this call, I added in this slide quickly. There'll be more kind of advertisement that I start later today. But our study phone number and email and Instagram, where you can find our flyer, as well as a sheet that was created with the wonderful suggestions and work of our team for scripts for how you could send us an email, and scripts for how you could give us a phone call if that makes it more accessible for you, as well as a consent video to meet our team and hear about our study in a video and audio format versus just a written format. And again, these are not ideas that I came up with individually. We co-created and worked together, and the research project specifically was enhanced because of everyone's lived experiences and perspectives, creating these accessible methods of engagement. So that brings us to the end of our formal talk, but I hope you'll stick around. We're happy to have a Q&A and answer questions about our specific study. I'm happy to also jump in for the clinical pieces of some of this work, and also the other, beginning parts. I'm going to turn it over to Milo because I see your hand is up if there's something you wanted to add. And some references I'll just quickly go through in case people watch this video and want to pause, that we did cite everything. A lot of them, as well as some links to some of the books and resources I shared as well. Awesome. I don't know if you want to jump in now, Milo. I saw your hand was up. I'm not sure if that was on purpose or not. So maybe we'll turn it over to everyone.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you on behalf of the whole team.
Thank you. What a fantastic presentation, and so lovely, I think, to really be able to hear from a number of members of the team. And thank you for sharing stuff that came. First of all, I think it's always interesting to hear about processes, but I agree that it makes a difference when actually different people have the opportunity to talk about that process. And it's nice for us to see it in action. One thing that also stood out to me, I appreciated sort of hearing, like Rebecca, from the sort of trainee perspective, hearing Milo, we don't see very often studies that include both youth and adults in the same space. So I imagine is maybe hard for everyone to speak to a bunch of strangers that you don't know about your work. But Milo, just a shout out about being the one youth representative, with a whole bunch of people who are older than you learning from you. But we do need to learn from you. We need to learn from all of you. So this was great. Thank you, Yanni, for telling us about this talk that you saw at the conference in Europe. And I don't want to take any more time saying thank yous. It's really exciting to see where it's going. One thing we could do is to put in the chat box the emails that you showed on the slide, and also the links around the study, because this way people can just sort of copy and paste if they're not people who take pictures of the slides. And also sometimes people will share their slides after, so that's something you can decide about as a team, but we can also circulate to everyone who came to the session. They'll see a summary after, and we can include again the information about the study, because I think it's going to be a really important study, really looking at, obviously, communication's two-way, or more than two ways if there's more than two people, but there's many ways to communicate, and we cannot just focus, I think, on autistic people's role in that communication. So this is a really interesting and innovative step and nice modeling of how to do co-production. So questions from our team. I'm seeing a lot of nice comments in the chat box, which is great, including questions about sharing this outside for people they think will need to see it. But yeah,
Just want to circle back, Milo. I don't know if you wanted to try to unmute. I know you were mentioning in the chat it wasn't working before, if there's something you wanted to say, but if it doesn't work, that's okay too. Might
Can
still
you
not
hear
be
me?
working.
yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Sorry, my dog came to sit and he accidentally unplugged my headphones. Sorry. I had originally just wanted to bring attention to the first comment in the chat asking if it could be circulated by email, but I'm glad that my microphone is working again, and I would like to say thank you so much for your kind comments.
Lots of people reacting, Milo, to your comments. Thank you. Questions or comments from other folks in our team? So we can use the chat box or we can raise our virtual hands. We do love dogs. Go ahead, Yanni.
Hi, Maya, and thank you, Milo, Rebecca, and Erin as well for doing this presentation. I really enjoyed it, and you explained everything so clearly, and really important ideas and very specific practical things that you're doing. And I'm on a mission myself in some of other projects very similar to yours, and that we publish these processes because we know how important it is, and particularly when we're going for funding and we want to explain like the different things we want to do, how much time it may take, and being able to support, people like Milo, Erin, and Rebecca in the project. So I'm just like on a mission, and I know you will do this, Maya, and everyone, but to publish this, because then those are things we can cite when we're looking for funding and explaining why the process is so important if we were going to really authentically engage lived experience perspectives. So thank you so much for this work. It's wonderful, and I'm so happy to have my small piece of participation in it.
And you may have seen this on the slides, but shout out that Yanni is on my thesis committee. That is not our monthly meetings, but gives wonderful oversight as well to the early planning stages.
I just have a question. So I clicked the Instagram link and there is like a little link to the Google Docs, which led me to a flyer. And I noticed on the flyer you use a template that people can use to send back. And I think that's a fantastic idea. I haven't seen that before. So I just wanted to know how that's working, and do people use that?
It's a great question. I'm going to give a shout out to Erin. I believe it was their idea to add this. We literally just heard back about recruitment maybe an hour before this talk, so I haven't had the chance to see it. To be transparent, it did stem with issues getting texting set up as an option. We don't have texting, it's just email or phone call. So we were really trying to think about accessibility options, but I'm going to let Erin jump in to see if there's any other thoughts they want to share, because it was their idea.
Yeah, so when it comes to accessibility and working with people with disabilities in general, I've done some work in that area. And one of the barriers that many people face is writing emails. The tone, maybe folks don't have experience writing emails, and it may be a barrier to participating. So in the past, what we've done in other projects is create scripts that are readily accessible so that folks who may think, I want to participate, but I don't know about, writing how it's supposed to go, it may remove that barrier. And so in the past, we've had folks who have used it. And I do hope that in this case here as well, that we'll be able to get folks who may not have otherwise felt comfortable participating now be able to reach out more comfortably and join the study.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that. I think it's fantastic.
Seeing a question from Lee in the chat box. Do you want to ask that question, Lee, or maybe people can read it? So 1 or 2 suggestions for improving communication strategies. Lee talks about her son, and she wants to know about language ways of communication starting right now that we can all use. And then after that, Dory, go ahead.
Sure, I'm happy to jump in quickly, I guess, building off of the slide that I shared. I think it's really just meeting people where they are, and I think that obviously there's things that we can do to create supportive communication environments. That could be kind of one area, but supporting kind of self-advocacy, but also not overemphasizing self-advocacy and really having communication partners that can help set up communication environments where we're encouraging topics that are going to be successful and of interest to both parties, and we're helping shape communication environments. If someone else is asking a million questions at once, or it's a loud place, can we as a communication partner be that supportive person to help shape a more supportive communication environment? I think the rest are quite individual, but really like knowing the person you're communicating with and what their strengths are and how to meet them where they are, and create those supportive environments, I guess, would be like the broad takeaway. And go ahead, Dory.
Hi, Maya. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to say it's such a pleasure to be a part of this project. Thank you so much for reaching out to be a partner. The presentation today was so clear and thorough, and it just demonstrates that way of two-way communication and how to communicate in a way with visuals and auditory and having people in the chat. And I just want to say thank you for including us.
Thank you for being our valued community partner.
I should say it's another nice example, actually, of these kinds of programs. Sometimes these programs stimulate partnerships, but they also give funding. And they will, I think, have a call again, the Autism Alliance, for something similar this next year. And for anyone wondering, we have also offered to sort of partner or fund on one of those kinds of programs. So. Other questions and comments. I was seeing Michelle, a comment about wanting to get Instagram as direct messaging as a way to communicate, which your REB said no to. I was going to say we've had REB approval for texting as another way of doing the communication, and it did take a bit of work, but I think there's recognition at CAMH that certainly young people, but a lot of other people as well, are not about to send an email or for sure do a phone call, that texting is simpler. So we have set phones that we can use for the studies that are the research phones, and that's the purpose they're used for. But we haven't looked at Instagram or any kind of like Facebook. Also, that's, I think, a direct messaging kind of function, but I guess also can be difficult with the REBs. But it is important to think about where people find the information, and then how are they most comfortable communicating, right? So go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, I think our challenge was we didn't have a physical phone that could accept text. So the number that we have for this associated with the study can accept text, which was our challenge, but maybe a good recommendation for others. My question, and I don't mean to put our team on the spot, but even the questions in the chat were getting me thinking about what could be the potential outcomes or applications of this work. And I loved early on, you said we wanted to have like either an immediate or a near now impact. And I was thinking, who is this work really for? Like the close communication partners, or is it people who provide training or suggestions to families and or youth themselves, or is it for the youth themselves? Do you have any ideas?
Go ahead, Milo.
Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I would like to think that it would be for everyone in a sense. It should, if it goes well, it should impact all three of these groups of people, whether it's impacting it in some way, shape, or form. It will hopefully help close communication partners have better or more successful, sorry, my dog is here, com just have more successful interactions with the autistic person or people in their lives. It, more than anything, it hopefully will benefit and impact autistic youth who should not have to exhaust themselves and to mask and conform to autistic or neurotypical standards. And it would hopefully help speech language pathologists have a better idea of how to support autistic youth as opposed to making everyone else feel more comfortable with it, with them communicating in neurotypical ways.
Exactly right, Milo. I would have said the same thing, but you said it better than I would have. I'll leave space for a second in case Erin or Rebecca want to jump in before we go to the next people too. But it's great because we've all, I think, brought different perspectives of why we think it might be valuable and then shaped what we're creating based on what we want out of it. Go ahead, Rebecca.
I was just about to type it in the chat, but I also, because that third piece of where we're evaluating how the co-design process goes with the youth co-designing the communication training, I think that that can really contribute to sharing processes and how to really include autistic youth or autistic adults in co-design processes for materials that directly affect supporting autistic people and their allies.
Thanks, Rebecca. I see Sue has a comment or a question. Oh, you're on mute, Sue. Sue, you're on mute. So if you want to unmute yourself, it's not working. If it's really not working, try now. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Sorry about that, everybody. It's I'm on WebEx more than Zoom, but I just was saying Milo kind of nailed it, that everyone needs it. And this is in response to that question that you asked, is who needs to learn this and hear it. And I just want to say, as a clinician who works in the Israeli team here at CAMH, we are all shouting from the rooftops the need for accessibility in clinicians and mental health professionals and providers in every, like Milo said, everywhere. But as a mom of an autistic teen also, I want to add, I am so frustrated as a clinician at CAMH, just witnessing the amount of mental health professionals providing care for my son who should know better and who should know a little bit about the importance of accessible communication. And they have no clue. And these are people that we would think know better. So I think Milo just said it, everybody needs this, but I would love to see some kind of packaging and some kind of, outward facing accessible information for mental health professionals that need to know, because if autistic youth and adults are going for services and they're not even being treated with the dignity and respect to be communicated with in a way that works for them by the mental health professionals, then it's a losing battle. So I really think starting with the clinicians and the teams providing support, I really hope you do that. And that's why I was saying, could I share this? Because I can think of a lot of people right off the top of my head who could really benefit from all this excellent information. So I really hope you package this and share it out widely. Thank you. Thanks so much for all of your work on this.
Thanks, Sue. Erin, I think you might have the last words for today. Go for it.
Yeah, to add on to what we were talking about the impact for today, another thing is how the study is designed for participants, in that the questions we're asking and how we're engaging the people in the study are very intentionally developed to have participants reflect on their own experiences. And in many ways, through going through this exercise, participants, when I've done similar ones in the past, upon reflecting and giving feedback, have said that going through this study helped them better understand themselves, their own communication, and improve their own communication with others. And so through this, it also benefits the people that are in the study. We're not just extracting knowledge from them, or we're trying to not just extract that knowledge from them, but for those who are in the study, that there's an immediate benefit, as well as the results of the study we're going to be disseminating to many different things. And the idea around potentially publishing these methods and how this process worked for us, I think that was really fantastic as another kind of output and impact as well.
Thank you, Erin, and Rebecca and Milo and Maya. It's been a really great talk. I think we could probably have another half hour of discussion, but we won't, because it is time for people to take a little bit of a break, hopefully, get a stretch in. I know folks on site today at the hospital, some of us are meeting for lunch, but this is wonderful. We all learned, and I think we're feeling a little more inspired. And we're really excited to see where this research goes, and also happy to spread the word in terms of recruitment. So thank you very much.